Arsenal won, Brentford won in the Premier League. A strange game again. A strange game, which sees Arsenal draw again. What is that, their 11th or 12th draw this season in the Premier League, number 12. I think only Everton have drawn more games than them this campaign. Look, Liverpool have been champions for a while now, but we're going to delve into that. Another draw, why they're drawing games. Are the reason for their last two draws the same as the previous 10 this season? Want to get your views, want to get your opinions on that. But one thing is for sure, they are Madrid ready. You could see with the lack of intensity throughout the course of this game that their mind is set on Champions League football. Is that a good? Is that a bad thing? Is it a positive thing? Are you concerned as an Arsenal fan in terms of rhythm? Hit the like and the share button. Get us your comments in now. We want to know what you think about this game today. Plus, an interesting refereeing decision, which I want to get people's opinions on. We spoke about it many times this season on the terrace, and that is why in the last couple of years have tackles from behind suddenly been deemed acceptable or only yellow card offences. When I grew up, they were always red cards. You would get, if you were at school and you did it, you'd get in so much trouble by your teachers, PE teachers, etc. But we want to get your views, we want to get your opinions on all of this right now. AMG Guna says, no teeth, weak as fuck in the league. It's a great comment. It's a great comment because, how do I say this? Arsenal this season have drawn too many matches, and the majority of the games they've drawn, it's been down to not having enough firepower and not taking their chances. This, for me, isn't opinion anymore. It's a fact that there's been too many games this season where Arsenal have lacked the firepower and or the clinical edge from their team. Even in some of the games where they were down to 10 men, like Brighton, they had the opportunities and chances to still win that game and they didn't take it. And I understand why Arsenal fans will see another draw today and they will criticize. They will, again, another draw. We're weak, like AMG Guna has just said. I know why he will say we are weak from his perspective as an Arsenal fan. At the same time, there was a bit of a lack of intensity last week against Everton. And yes, there was a terrible penalty decision that went against Arsenal. But I didn't see a fight from Arsenal. I didn't see them busting a gut, risking it all to win the game against Everton. Why? I believe the players feel and know the league title race is over. The same as today. I thought Arsenal were the better team over 90 minutes. I thought they created the better chances. They're up against a very hard team to play, by the way, at home. Brentford's away record in 2025 is the best in terms of points accumulated, goal scores, goals conceded. Sky put it up on the screen, and we all know they're a hard team to beat. I didn't realize they've been that good away from home this calendar year so far. But what I saw from Arsenal, and by the way, I thought it was really poor defending from Arsenal for the goal they conceded. 2 or 3 opportunities to really clear the ball from the set piece and then the secondary balls into the box. And it really wasn't handled very well by Arsenal. And I'm sure that Mikel Arteta will be sitting them down with the set piece coaches and they'll be drilling them on that because they won't want to make any mistakes like that in the Real Madrid game this Wednesday. However, after that, they made subs. And I thought, okay, well, let's see what the subs coming on can do. And there was a little push in the last 10 minutes of the game, last 5 minutes of normal time and the time added on. But there was almost this resignation from Arsenal of, am I going to risk pulling a hamstring? Am I going to risk my knees or my ankles going into a tackle? Am I going to fight for every inch to make sure we get the win today, which essentially is just going to keep us in second? Or am I going to kind of save myself for the Champions League game? That is how I felt. That is how I felt Arsenal players took the game today. Now, a week ago, I thought it was a really fair, a really fair sort of, it was a really fair bit of criticism to say maybe we want to have some momentum going into the Real Madrid game. I get why Arsenal fans say that. I understood why Arsenal fans said, I want momentum. I want us to have momentum going into that game. And they didn't have it. And they blew Real Madrid away. So I think when you look at the game state, when you look at the circumstances of the season, where you find yourself today on the 12th of April, yes, it's another draw and it's frustrating. Yes, there was a lack of intensity, and I get why Arsenal fans would be upset. And some will say it's waving the white flag. I just think it's being realistic. They know they're not winning the league. They are not busting a gut in these games to win them. They're just keeping themselves ticking over, ready for their Champions League exploits. It's as simple as that for me. Now, look, I'm not an Arsenal fan, so some of you will be upset about this. I'm sure there's some Arsenal fans that will be over upset about this and over angry about this, even though they wrote the league off 7 or 8 months ago. But maybe my question would be to them, does Tuesday night performance against Real Madrid not show you that they don't necessarily need to be running through brick walls in each of these Premier League games leading up to Champions League matches to be able to turn it on? There's some proof in that. So I kind of got it. And the last sort of 20 minutes of this game just reminded me of those end of season going through the motion type games. We actually have a comment that came through here that says on the screen, read between the lines, that was practice. And it felt a little bit like that. It felt a bit like a practice match towards the end, really. And if Arsenal scored and won, the players would celebrate. But I just don't think they're going into the dressing room right now feeling terrible about today. Now, some will say that's not a winning mentality. You're never going to win a league title if you behave that way. I don't know if that's true, because they're just going through the motions at this point. I've seen many a team do that towards the end of a season and go on and win a league title the next year because they know that they can't win it now. So I don't know. There'll probably be some Arsenal fans that want the players working at 100% optimum level the whole time. But they're the same Arsenal fans that complain about the players not being given enough rest and rotation and burning the players out and injuring them. So I don't quite know where they stand on this. But look, the league title was over many, many weeks ago. It is only 2 wins in the last 7 league games. But I don't think in the grand scheme of this season, with the game state where it is, that is really the very end of the world. Champions League qualification is going to happen for Arsenal. I think it's almost a certainty. They've got this massive game against Real Madrid in the middle of the week. In terms of performances, look, it's a really hard one as well, because I thought there was a lack of intensity out there today. I thought Kieran Tierney played well, starting in that left-back role, and could have got himself on the score sheet. I thought Waneri was dangerous for large parts of the game. Declan Rice was probably the standout player, along with Thomas Partey at right back, and not just for the way they combined for the goal. It was a brilliant goal, by the way, a brilliant driving run from Declan Rice. And Don made me laugh, really, because he was just ripping in at half-time into Declan Rice about how bad he is, etc., etc. And then he's the guy that was a pivotal player in scoring that goal. Just a lovely bit of irony, really. But yeah, they played well. But again, I wouldn't look at it and say anyone was like an 8 or a 9 out of 10 based on normal standards. It just was a weird game. The same as the Everton match last week, and maybe what Arsenal need, and then you may get a few of these games in the last 6 matches, is maybe Arsenal need a couple of games against teams that are fighting for something. Maybe that will get the juices flowing, because even with Brentford and with Everton are safe and they're not going to get relegated, as an example. Brentford are literally mid-table, won't finish in Europe, can't get sucked into a relegation battle. So they've played 2 teams that are already, by and large, on the beach as well. That isn't going to help with the intensity of these matches at this stage of the season. I don't even know who Arsenal play next in the Premier League. Who they got? Next they've got Ipswich away. That might have a little bit more fire in the belly. Although they're pretty much relegated, maybe if Ipswich beat Chelsea tomorrow, I doubt it, but if they did, they'd then be 7-8 points away from safety. There might be a little bit of fire in their belly, as an example. And I think maybe Arsenal need a little bit of that. And maybe if Arsenal get through Real Madrid, there's a couple of weeks before the semi-finals, you'll probably demand a little bit more intensity so nobody gets rusty. But I've understood it these last few games personally. But I'm not an Arsenal fan, so I'd love to get your views and I would love to get your opinions on that. But in my personal view, I just think Arsenal are Real Madrid ready. I think you will see a far more intense and a much, much higher quality performance against Real Madrid. I really do. Thank you, Luke, for encouraging everybody to get that like button smashed. Thank you very much indeed. I appreciate it. Terry, that is why Arsenal won't win the league. Be quiet, Arsenal fans. Don't give excuses. If you don't have the right mindset, you won't win. I understand that. But do you know what? It's interesting talking to my friend about this the other day in mentality. And it's not like in boxing where, okay, well, I'm 5 rounds, I'm 8 rounds, I'm 9 rounds down. I'm getting beat up in the 10th. I'm going to take the rest of the round off and then I'll come back fighting harder in the 11th. It's hard to do that sometimes because you can get knocked out. You have to maintain a certain level of intensity. It isn't like tennis where you're looking to, you might be losing in the sets, but you're still fighting for every point. You may think that, oh, my fitness is better than my opponent. If I keep fighting, I keep making him dig out for every point. At some stage, I think he's going to dip because that comes in that moment. You're playing that game. There's no respite, really. In football, I understand your mindset, Z, and you're essentially saying that even though Arsenal can't win the league, they should play every game like they still can. And I understand where you're coming from when you say that. However, in the reality of football, I have seen teams be crowned champions and then the intensity drops off. Doesn't mean the following year they're not going to be able to retain their league title. This has happened on many, many occasions. Some teams actually as well. And it's really interesting because Arsenal have got something massive to try and win still. That's in the back of their minds. If Arsenal went out of the Champions League and then played the remaining Premier League games with an element of relaxation, and there may not be the same intensity as a title challenging game, but if they're more relaxed and there's not much going on, you might see Arsenal play with a freedom that's sometimes harder to produce when there's intensity. Just because that football's really good when the pressure's off doesn't get, oh, that means they can win the league next year. Look, they're winning all these games towards the end of the season. I don't quite think your train of thought works in a team sport when there's a competition outside of the Premier League that they are putting all their eggs into the basket of. But if you get where I'm coming from. Man United did this. Now, we never got on to win the league, but Jose Mourinho is an elite level manager that understands how to win. And his first season at United, it's very obvious that we weren't going to win the Premier League. And it was a really close race for the top 4. He made a decision when that looked impossible to get. In the last 4 or 5 games of the season, we rotated and rested a lot of players, and we put all our eggs in the basket of winning that Europa League. So I've seen it done before by an elite level manager, as an example, in Jose Mourinho. I wouldn't say that that was a loser's way of going about it. It was actually the right thing to do. The quality thing here for Arsenal is that even if they only win another 3 of their remaining 6 matches, it's not going to change their league position whatsoever. And I don't think putting their eggs into the Champions League basket now, Z, is proof that they're never going to be able to win a league title. Again, I'd love to hear more of your opinion on that. I just don't quite think it's that, my friend, personally. The same as if the league title race was over and they were playing with a freedom and they won their remaining 6 games 5-0 each, that doesn't guarantee they're going to win the league next year. I think it works in both directions, my friend. Of course, no bottling here. VAR again or luck. Look, I don't look at this as a bottling situation for Arsenal. I think there is something else on their minds. I think there is something else that they are playing for. And if, for instance, they were in this top 4 race, Hatton, and there was a genuine chance they were going to finish 6th or 7th, and they needed every win, and there was a need for intensity and a need for desire into that 90 minutes. There was a need to smash into every tackle and to run through brick walls. I would agree with you. If the end of that game played out that way, I think it would be a very, very different kettle of fish. But what we can't do here is treat every game and every team's situation right now in the Premier League in a monolithic way. As if it is all very similar and all the same and everybody's going through the same situations, because it's very, very different indeed. It's why Chelsea fans are angry at the moment, because they've seen players rotate for Premier League games that in view of, they're probably going to be used to win the Conference League, and they haven't even been used in the Conference League. I can understand a Chelsea fan going, well, why haven't we got intensity? Top 4's available. Champions League football's available. We want it next season. We want to try and win it. For Arsenal, they're not in that circumstance. So I do think the scenario is a little bit different, but I appreciate your opinion. If Arsenal don't win the Champions League, will Arteta get sacked? No. I think there is almost zero chance that Arteta gets sacked in the summer. That's not me giving you my opinion as to whether that's right or wrong. My mind's still very much the same as it always has been. If he doesn't win the Champions League, I think if they could find a manager that they were very certain and there was a high level of probability was better than him, they should look to do it. If it's a gamble, he might be better, he might not be. Then I think you stick with where you are right now. But if a much better manager is available, and I'm talking if I'm in the eyes of the board, then I wouldn't, from the outside, say it's a terrible decision. However, in reality, is he getting sacked, D? No. Same game versus Madrid, -2 fluky 3 kicks. Lucky. See, that's where you're wrong. And that tells me you've just watched this game on SofaScore. That tells me you didn't watch the game, the difference in intensity running. The way in that last 20 minutes, Arsenal were not even... There was a tackle right near the end, actually, where there was a bit of a knee clash. And you heard the crowd go, oh, yeah, very different game indeed. Some fans will overanalyze. There's been too many positives this past week. The game went how expected. As long as no new injuries, it's a dead rubber. So what's really interesting, Highbury Ultra, this is the way some people's minds work. Fuming last week because there was no intensity, and that's going to give you a hangover into the Madrid game. Didn't hangover into the Madrid game. Say you played with a lack of intensity today. Say you lose the game to Real Madrid, whether you go through or not, it will be, see, I told you because we didn't play with intensity, it was going to catch up with us. Correlation and causation are not always connected. You know, just because it's correlation doesn't mean it's the causation of the problem. And you know, it's like the Saka returning too early from injury. I asked this question and I didn't, maybe someone commented and I didn't see it because I don't read every single comment. It would be impossible because you people are amazing and there's so many comments. But the one question I was asking all of last week is how many games, how many weeks, how many months do you give between Saka returning and his next injury when you don't blame it on him returning too early? And nobody wanted to give a specific time or amount of games. And I understand why, because if you give that specificity, it puts you in a position where you could be deemed right or wrong, right? And I think that's what goes on with some analysis from certain Arsenal fans towards their club. It's, I'm going to keep, if I just say this bad thing can happen, this bad thing can happen. If I keep saying all these bad things can happen, it's a bit like throwing spaghetti at a wall. Some of it is going to stick. Sometimes you're like, right, I've said these 10 bad things will happen. You get it with a lot of those fake fortune tellers. You can predict, if I sat here now and wrote 10,000 things that are going to happen in the next 100 years, some of them are probably going to happen. Right? And it's, but if you only focus on the ones that happen, oh my God, Terry Fleurs is the new Nostradamus. You know, look at all these things he predicted in the future. So yeah, I think there was a little bit of that going on, a little bit of over-analysis. For me, it's simple. There is a lack of intensity, but I think every Arsenal fan worth their salt understands why. Sky Sports, by the way, they're not going to perceive it that way. Sky Sports are going to push it as, no, every game's got to be intense. Every game's got to be amazing. Why? Because if they start sitting there now as a company and all their employees and pundits are company men and women, they start saying, yeah, this is it now for the rest of the season. Because by the way, 90% of games now for the rest of this season are dead rubbers. Relegation's pretty much sorted. The Champions League, the title's over, as an example. So that takes a massive chunk of team, probably from 11th place down to the bottom of the league. Most of their games, unless they're playing a team that's fighting for a Champions League spot, and that's like 4 teams, the rest of the games are all dead rubbers. But Sky Sports are not going to tell you that. So what will happen, if you're someone that wants to hate on, in this particular scenario, Arsenal, you will go, oh, yeah, I heard Alan Smith say that. And I heard Jamie Carragher say, yeah, they're bang on their spot on. This lack of intensity stinks. Well, they want to push out this notion that most games will still have intensity and should be more entertaining and should give back to the fans. But in reality, this is what happens towards the end of all seasons. It's just, yeah, there'll be a lot of overanalyzing, no doubt. Arsenal regress this season, and if they don't win the Champions League, it's a huge disappointment. They didn't pressure Liverpool at all. And listen, that is a very true statement. This season, there have been far too many draws in the Premier League, without a shadow of a doubt. And I think every Arsenal fan has already called it out. The problem is with that analysis now is that it's already been done. It's already been done. And if I think about the Football Terrace, I'm going to go back and I'll find you the exact date when it was. A few people did it much early. Brandon and a few others much early in the season said, I don't think we'll win it. But you can pinpoint it because I need to find the results when it happened. I'll give you the date. So when Arsenal drew 0-0, when they lost to West Ham on the 22nd of Feb and then drew 0-0 with Forest on the 26th of Feb, that moment there was when the vast majority of Arsenal fans said, done. It's when the vast majority of Arsenal fans that come onto the Football Terrace, whether they are pro-Arteta, anti-Arteta, it doesn't really matter. That was when the vast majority said the league title race is over. in those shows, the match reactions, the full fan highlight shows, the top 6 straight facts, that was when the lack of investment in a striker in the summer, not buying a striker in January, and particular players like Odegaard, like Martinelli at the time, not being back at not getting to their optimum standard. That was when that was all called out under tow. That was when that was all criticised. That was when Arteta, Edu, the Cronkies, the players were ripped into and absolutely correctly reprimanded by their supporters and by rival fans talking about the game, about that situation. The problem now is this for me. Most Arsenal fans, they might talk about it a few more times, but it's been done, it's been said. They've had their say on this. There is no need to keep repeating it every single show or every time somebody tweets or every time they're linked to a new player. Because you've said it, you've got it out of your system. I think there's only so many times you can, I've had a go at Onana this week as a Man United fan, but I've said my criticism. I'm not going to keep going on and on and on and on and on about the same mistake. Maybe if he makes another mistake, I will. Again, maybe if we don't sign a new goalkeeper and we back him to be the goalie next season, you go, look back at these mistakes, it might happen again. But the vast majority of Arsenal fans have called out those problems, and they have definitely underperformed. And they've had too many draws in the Premier League. Too many draws, and most of that came down to them not having enough firepower. The problem is, I don't expect to see Arsenal fans moaning about that after they've already moaned about it. It's a bit like telling your kid off because he's been naughty at school. Punish them. They're grounded. They've got to do some chores. They do their chores. They do their grounded time. They're behaving better. But you still continue to tell them off for that thing they did. I just find that to be a strange way to behave. But maybe that's just me. Terry, Arsenal going to say we practiced today, but in multiple seasons, Liverpool were going for the double, treble, and quad multiple seasons levels. Yeah, but the title race is over, isn't it, Z? So say they were 3 points behind Liverpool today and put in that performance. I don't think any Arsenal fan worth their salt. I don't think any pundit, I don't think any YouTuber like myself that talks about football would say it was just practice for the Real Madrid game. The point is, the league title was, and we all know this, Z, for a fact, was conceded the better part of 2 months ago with the defeat to West Ham and the draw to Nottingham Forest. All of us on those shows criticised Arsenal heavily. So what you're doing here is you're adding a context that doesn't exist in this scenario. Say Arsenal were fighting for the Premier League, Champions League double today, this performance, I think, would be completely and utterly unacceptable. But they're not fighting for that double because the league title race, yes, publicly Arteta won't say it and the players won't say it, but we can all see with the performances, we can all see with the focus being more on the Champions League that it's been conceded. And even the people that hate Arteta and hate Arsenal, they also said back in February the league title race was over. So you can't move the goalpost now and say, how dare they remove their intensity when you're the same very people that said the league title race was done nearly 2 months ago. It's about being fair in your analysis. And there'll probably be some, and again, I don't know what they've said. I've gone live straight after the game. There'll be some Arteta outers today. There'll be some of Arsenal's detractors that will ignore the fact that they said the league title race was absolutely done and impossible to win, and then still moan that there isn't an intensity in the game, in a competition that they have said's over. Deep that. I feel Arsenal were going for a second, should have sat back more because Rice gave away 2 or 3 times after leading, is what AMT says here. People's banter for Arsenal is usually just non-football fan takes. I think any football fan would tell you this is a dead rubber game. Yeah, I definitely think that too. I was honestly looking at the game more around. I was looking at I was actually disappointed it didn't start. I wanted to see what Saka's fitness levels were like, as an example. I wanted to see if any players that came in as fringe players today, like really put in a performance, trying to get a starting berth. And none of that really happened. It was like watching pre-season. Arsenal don't finish second and lose the Champions League. Arteta sacked. But they're not going to sack him. Like I've already said, should they sack him? I've already given you my opinion on that. And I stand by it. If I'm the sporting director at Arsenal and I could bring in a head coach who I believe with a certainty level of, say, 80 to 90% or above is better than Arteta, I'd look to do it. If the certainty is 50-50 or less, I would keep him. However, that's me putting myself in someone's shoes. Do I think they're going to sack him? No. You can tell me why that's wrong and what they should do. Like, give me your opinion, but I've already answered that question already, my friend. Forest is third and 6 points off us in second, and they lost today. I understand this game was a chance to rotate. We threw this and Everton for Madrid. Yes, you could use the word "you threw it." I think that's a fair bit of terminology. But if you knock Real Madrid out, was it worth it? Potentially. The fact is, going into the Real Madrid tie, Arsenal was seen by most people as having a very small and minute chance of going through. So I just don't think if Arsenal go through on Wednesday, which they absolutely should do from this point, having a 3-0 lead, I don't think drawing these two games and going from second to second, which if you would have won them, you'd have gone from second to second, I don't think it's going to play any major part on your season. I really, really don't. I don't at all. And I think we saw with the Real Madrid performance that your players know they can do better than they've done recently in the league. But drawing away at Everton didn't make them not believe in themselves for Wednesday night. I don't think this draw this afternoon is going to make Arsenal players go, I doubt we can beat Real Madrid now. So again, if you think that, I respect your opinion. I personally don't see it that way. Football fans are too scared to be wrong. Yeah. Yeah, I hear you on that, mate. I hear you on that. I really do. We had this conversation earlier, Harold, in the City game. I tweeted and stand by the fact that I think there needs to be a little study and a little discourse into how Pep hasn't been able to make City strong structurally this year in a defensive manner in terms of leaking opportunities, leaking chances, conceding goals. They've conceded more than Man United, by the way. Then when I praise their comeback, you can't praise a comeback after you slagged off the way they defend. No, I can, because there was great attacking football. KDB was an absolute monster. O'Reilly was brilliant. Mamouche scoring again. Yeah, but you've slagged off the way they're structured defensively. Yes, I know. But I can criticize that and praise the goals. But it's this element of, you can't, no, because you were wrong about something. Well, no. It's like it's not even that they're so scared to be wrong, Harold. It's a lot of people now only like to talk about one thing at once. They don't live in a world where multiple things can be true at the same time. It's really strange. Have Arsenal regressed, or is this squad without a striker reached its ceiling? It's something I'd love to get Arsenal fans' opinions on. Well, I'm going to ask, Footy Judge Mo's coming on in a minute, and we can ask him that question, Patrick. The word regressed is really interesting because when I think of the word regressed, it depends on how you view it, right? So, because it has multiple meanings. It can mean that you've reverted and you've gone back to your previous state. Some people may view that as that means you're going to stay there. Some may see it as a relapse. So you've been sober for 10 years, you've relapsed and got drunk, but you're now going to go back to being sober for a long time again. So therefore it's a blip. So it really depends on how you interpret and view the word regression versus the football team. So I think the language is really key around this. I don't necessarily think it's regression. They made bad transfer decisions in the summer and didn't bring in enough firepower. Because when I think of a team regressing, I think of a team that's fallen off and it's going to take them a while to get back to the very peak of their power, for me personally. And I think we don't do this enough as football fans, is we use a word like, he's world class. You can see two brothers, two dudes, two mates fight each other for an hour, but what really they actually agree with each other in terms of how good either player are. They just have different definitions of what the word world class means. Where if they'd have framed both their meanings for world class, you would turn around and go, well, I wouldn't call him world class, but I agree with your assessment of that player. So me and Mo could argue whether Arsenal have regressed or not for an hour. And then Mo goes, yeah, but I think they're going to stay at this level now forever. And I go, well, no, I think they'll bounce back next season in the league. And then we'll go, okay, well, we both understand each other's points. We just maybe should use different words. And yeah, so for me, when it comes to regression, you throw a top-class striker into this team, you throw some more quality into those wide areas, which they're going to do in the summer, I believe Arsenal will challenge for the league title again next year. I think they'll have a better league title challenge and stay in it longer. So is it regression? I don't know if that's the right word. They've had a poor season by their recent standards. Do I think they'll be back next year challenging? I just can't see any reason why not, my friend. I really can't see any reason why not, especially with the summer they're linked to have him. Crazy how Ruben won't put in Bayern after his beautiful performance against Arsenal. Bayern is taller and is built for quick reflexes. Well, you've got to be. The one thing we have to be honest about here, I don't really want to get onto Man United today, but Bayern has been out injured for the majority of that time between the Arsenal game and now. So there hasn't been the opportunity to give him games. He's been out injured. There's a rumor he's going to start tomorrow. We'll see. We will see. Pep going through a divorce, so he's not locked in. It's not a good enough excuse to me. It's not a good enough excuse, personally. Terry, just to clarify, not my opinion, just seen some people say they have regressed. And I've not got an issue with people saying they've regressed. I want to know what they mean by regression. And I think that for me is a much more constructive conversation. When you say regress, what do you mean? Because they may say, I think they've dropped off this year and I'll be back next year. And you'll go, I agree. They may say they've dropped off and they won't ever be back. And you would say, I disagree. So it's not about using the word regressed. It's about understanding how they are interpreting the word in connection to football. And I think that is the more productive way to have that conversation rather than arguing about the meaning of a word. If that makes sense. Judge Mo's here with me. How are you doing, mate? Sorry, I know you're eating. Sorry, bro. Sorry, this is you eating.
You gotta call me off guard.
Sorry. What did you make of today? Because I'm seeing a lot of people criticize Arsenal when I get it. There are others saying, look, it's practice, all eggs in the Madrid basket. Sort of how I see it, if I'm being honest. They didn't even look like they really wanted to win it at the end. But how do you view it? Is that the right way for Arsenal to approach it? Give me your thoughts, mate.
Yeah, cry babies. They're everywhere, bro. Like, I swear to God, they're everywhere. Arsenal are gonna get second. He rested a lot of players. There are some positives to take from this game, and there are a lot of negatives to take from this game. But if I'm an Arsenal fan, I wouldn't care. I'm thinking about the semi-final of the Champions League. I'm thinking about the Real Madrid game. People are just crying for just sake of crying. Oh my God, why did we drop points? Who cares? Nottingham Forest lost. You're not gonna drop off second. It's not an indication of how Arsenal play football. I'm going to tell you something, Ter. When I was watching the game, even the squad players knew the message that the coach is sending, that it doesn't matter. That is not a big deal, to be honest. Dropping points now is not a big deal. They are conserving energy, and they use the energy when they can, which is the counter-attack that they had. The only thing that I take from this game negative, which is maybe, if you're an Arsenal fan, you should cry about this, that your depth is not as strong as what you think. Your depth. Jorginho has to go. You need a better second team, because next season, if you want to go far in the Cups and you want to go far in the Champions League again, you need better depth. You need players that are better. You need another center-back to Saliba. You need more players to come in and just replace these guys. Jorginho was awful. Everyone knows that I don't like Jorginho. But then the positive part about Arsenal is that they still pressed Brentford with the squad player. And before they scored, they had 73% ball possession. And that is a good sign that Mikel Arteta has made even the squad players play the same game that the starters produce. Even Bukayo Saka, when he missed that chance and he took so long, nobody cared. Mikel Arteta didn't care. Nobody cared. So just cry babies, to be honest. It's just ridiculous that just some people want to cry about it. And I don't get it, to be honest. In terms of like the game itself, tactically, I thought Arsenal played all right. I thought they moved the ball well. Nwaneri needs more game time. He's going to develop to be a very, very good player. I know that he created the goal that was chopped off. It was way miles offside, but the cross was spot on. He played well. I thought actually Tierney played well on that left back. He wasn't bad at all. Zinchenko was horrific in that midfield, to be honest. He was absolutely terrible, to be honest. Now, nobody cared about it. Are they ready for Real Madrid? Without a shadow of a doubt, they are, because they are rested now. Thomas Partey was taken off. He scored a wonderful goal. And about that, we'll talk about it, because I want to ask you another question about it.
Yeah, go on.
But before I go on, there's a lot of players that are rested. For everyone that keeps saying that Declan Rice can only play set pieces, if you watch that goal, the first touch, the turn, the dribble, the decision making, the driving with the ball. That is what people say that Declan Rice lacks. And for everyone that is saying that Declan Rice lacks football ability, that is the definition of a player that can drive with the ball, that can dribble, that can pass. Thomas Partey didn't need to take a touch. So for me, I'm looking at him like, you can't criticize Declan Rice now after scoring free kicks, whipping in corners, and actually now assisting from open play, because that is what people just complain about. He played a good game. He was one of Arsenal's best players on the pitch. People just want to complain. He is a good player on the ball and off the ball as well. And that's just, do you think that people were harsh to criticize Declan Rice's open play creation, open play goals over the past like 12 months? You didn't justify. You spent 100 million only for someone who can whip in set pieces and will score a free kick every now and then.
Yeah, the Declan Rice attacks, because I do look at them as attacks, because I think they're often about trying to diminish him as opposed to having a constructive football conversation. It's always to try and shit on him. And I find them so forced and so over the top. There are intangible attributes he has in terms of his leadership ability. And you see how good his leadership ability is, because whether it's with the England squad, whether it's been with West Ham or whether it's now with Arsenal, you see the diversity of friendships he have. And what I mean by that is I'm talking about younger players, older players. It isn't just like he's lads with all the boys from England. He's friends with the boys from up north. He's friends with the lads from different parts of the world. And you can see this, and that for me shows sign of a great leader. You see the way he is on the pitch. Like, he may not always be the best player on the pitch, but he never gives up. He has got this drive. He has got this determination to win. And that's always ignored. The only element of his game he doesn't have, which people can criticize, is there are certain midfielders who are technically more aesthetically pleasing on the eye. You know, again, when we talk about that, it's like, yes, but this isn't ballet for me. Yes, some players look like David Beckham when he used to cross the ball, shoot a ball. It was almost like poetic the way the way he looked. And actually, there are certain players, and you get this in basketball, I suppose, this is the same. Like Michael Jordan's slam dunk, like he looked like an eagle soaring, if that made sense. Like certain people just look better doing things than others. And by the way, Michael Jordan was actually one of the greatest ever to do it. But I think what helped Michael Jordan, on top of every other thing he had, there was an aesthetically pleasing element to it too. And some people have the full package, don't they? They've got the technical ability, the outputs, the championships, aesthetically pleasing on the eye. They're a rarity, those athletes in any sport, if that makes sense, who have every single attribute. And Declan Rice can sometimes look a bit cumbersome, and I wouldn't even call it clumsy, but he can look a bit cumbersome. He isn't great for, like, you know, for the size of him. There are times where he can get sort of the ball trapped under his feet a little bit. There are elements of his game you can criticize, but I think what people do is they focus on those areas and they overanalyze them, if that makes sense. They overanalyze the one or two things that he's not elite at. So there was a moment a few games ago where he kind of got the ball and it was a little bit under his feet and he's running at pace and he's going towards the byline. And he couldn't get the ball under control and turn his body in the right time, and it went out for a throw. And I see it get clipped up and people are putting it angle 100 million, and he can't even trap the ball and turn in that position. And the irony of that moment is there's a finite amount of footballers in the world who have the ability to do what they're asking Declan Rice to do, coupled with all the great things that Declan Rice is good at. So I think what people do with Rice is they just like to nitpick on the two or three things that he's not elite at, although he's pretty good at them, and they over-focus on it, and it becomes that's why he's not good enough. That's why I don't like him. But in actuality, if you look at his career for West Ham and Arsenal, he rarely has a bad game. He rarely makes mistakes that lead to conceding goals. He scores goals. He creates opportunities. He's had massive performances in big games. Yes, he hasn't done it great in every single big game, but no player in the history of football has. And he's still only at the midpoint of his career. He's got more to come. So I do think a lot of the criticism of Rice is forced. And it's especially forced from a couple of fan bases who desperately wanted him and they didn't get him. So now it's about, let's attack the guy and make him out to be shit. So, yeah, I'm not a fan of the way Declan Rice is criticised. I've felt for a long time that it is largely over the top and exaggerated, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. He's a brilliant player. He's very good. And he's not like 29 or 28. I thought he's very good. Declan Rice, as a footballer, and also people misunderstand what football is in terms of development. He was playing in a very defensive team in West Ham. He went to Arsenal, the complete opposite style of play, always has the ball. West Ham averaged 42% ball position when he played for them. Now he's playing in a team that averaged over 60% ball position, yet they are acting like Declan Rice should come into Arsenal, and within 1 year, he should be the most aesthetically pleasing the guy on the ball. That's not how football works, because he was developed differently than what you think he is. You bought 100 million and he's developing. With all due respect to everyone, even Bruno Guimaraes when he first joined, he was good. But Bruno Guimaraes is getting better for Newcastle every season now. For 2.5 seasons now, he's developed. It's different than having someone else that is ready-made for this role. It's just different. And I like Declan Rice. I think he's so underrated in terms of the way he plays. And to be honest with you, I'm looking at the people that criticize him, and I'm like, you're really nitpicking, as Terry says. You're nitpicking. You're ignoring all the good things that he does on the pitch just to focus on the negatives because you dislike Arsenal, or you dislike Declan Rice, or because he's English, or because he's scored a free kick or a goal here and there, or he won more man of the matches than the games your player played, your preferred player play, because he's injured all the time.
This is what's interesting, right? So Jeremy Doku says, Terry, stop the hype. He can't pass like Partey. I would say that the element of Partey's passing that looks better is if it's close quarter passing. So you're in a very intricate little triangle, and you've got to pass it around a press. Partey is better at him than that. Doesn't mean Rice is bad. But when you actually break down the facts and look at it, I saw this comment and I went and looked. So this season in the Premier League, Thomas Partey has completed more open play passes. However, that's because he's either been right back or in DM, and you do a lot more smaller passes. But the extra 300 passes more he's undertaken, majority of those have been backwards as well. And I get the position Partey's in. There's a lot of forward and backwards passing, but based on the role he's in. But then you start looking at the chances created, much higher for Declan Rice from open play compared to Thomas Partey. You then start looking at the accuracy. By the way, neither of them are bad here. Thomas Partey, 88% accuracy. Declan Rice, 89% accuracy. Long passing accuracy, Partey's at 60%. Declan Rice is 61%. Crossing accuracy, actually, though, is the major difference. Is 16% for Thomas Partey, 28% for Declan Rice. That's the only one that Declan Rice is much better than him at. So I would agree with you, Jeremy Doku Goat, that Partey does look more aesthetically pleasing on the eye than Declan Rice. But in terms of the efficiency, in terms of the getting the ball from A to B safely, comfortably, and in the right way, there is barely any difference between the two players. And when it comes to real football, not street ball, not sort of freestyle football, and when it comes to the scouts picking players for their teams, they care more about the efficiency of a player than they do the aesthetically pleasing nature of it. And I just think, as I say, Declan Rice gets a hard time because he's not a beautiful football player to watch. And I do get it, by the way, Jeremy Doku. There are a group of football fans, and I'm not saying they're wrong to think this way. They view football through a very, very, very different lens. There are football fans who literally think that a player who dribbles with silky skills like Doku is a better technical footballer than someone like a Mo Salah. There are people that think that. There are people that think that players with the technique of a Danny Welbeck are better than players, ironically, like a Mo Salah. And I've said this before, that's not a dig at anybody. I know Lee Gunner said that's not a dig. That's how some people view football. I don't personally think, I don't know what anymore what Lee's
Someone told me Amrabat's a better player at the start of last season and was a better signing. I remember that.
No, exactly. And again, I don't know what Lee's view on Declan Rice is. I'm not putting words in his mouth on that. But for me, some people will just say, it doesn't tick a box for me. I don't like it. That's fair. The problem that I have is that the idea that Declan Rice has delivered what he has in his career so far, the idea that he is a bad player or not a good player, it's objectively wrong. It really, really is.
I'm not gonna lie, Terry. I think it's easy to make these kind of comments about Declan Rice being a £100 million signing, being a former West Ham player, former Chelsea Academy player. You're right about a lot of those things. But one thing I find is the English tax for bigging up players goes one way, but the English tax in dissing players also goes a certain way also. And I find Conor Gallagher and Declan Rice are two players who get a lot of insults and get comparisons to players who are way beneath their level. And now I'm not saying Declan Rice and Conor Gallagher are the same level. I do think Declan Rice is better, but I do see the two of them specifically, just to point out players I've noticed recently get a lot of insults. But when they're not playing for any big team and they're playing for Crystal Palace or West Ham, they get all the plaudits from everybody else. It's just when they're playing for Chelsea or Arsenal, they get dissed a little bit different.
Yeah, there's certainly that. I'm someone that I think judging anybody and using their passport as a reason. So I remember when Maguire was doing badly for Man United, you'd have people that were like, this is why I can't stand English players like Maguire. And I used to just think to myself, the fact you put the word English in there and you're getting no heat for it is wild. Because if you did that, if I went out today and said, this is why I hate Cameroonian players, this is why I hate French players, this is why I hate American players, I would get people would stop reading the rest of the tweet and go, how dare you focus on someone's nationality over their footballing ability. But there is this thing with English football players where there are some English players that are most certainly prejudged based on their nationality. And I find it such a strange way to behave.
I have an answer for it. I have a very, very easy answer. Because we as YouTubers, you have a big channel, Egal has a channel, I have a channel. We cater to the people that support the Premier League, that watch the Premier League, that actually talk about it. And the majority of the pundits we watch, you do a video every day about what Gary Neville said, what Carragher said, what TalkSport said. And the problem with it is that people feel that these guys favor the English players the majority of the times, so they tend to go to the opposite. You get the point, right? If we watch Spanish media and they're bigging up Spanish players, I think this is how it works, to be honest. Being non-English from outside that watch the Premier League, sometimes I feel like the same way we talk about why is Phil Foden so protected, for example, and why is this English player being criticized? It's because we watch English media and they tend to have bias. You admitted on your videos, Terry, that English media have bias.
Well, the bias is this, right? I do actually think Foden's been overprotected this season, but I also think Pep Guardiola's been overprotected this season from criticism. He's not English. But in terms of the focus, I know this on a personal level because of my brothers. They support Leyton Orient. They watch Premier League football. They don't care who wins the league. They don't care about anything. But one focus they have when it comes to the Premier League game is the same reason why now my brother watches Bayern Munich more than he used to. The same reason he now watches Real Madrid more than he used to. Because there's two big English players in those teams and he has a vested interest in how they're doing. And I do think there's millions of fans that watch English football who couldn't give a shit about the English national team. And that is absolutely fair because I don't care about any other country's football. Couldn't give a shit.
I don't care. I don't care if England do good or bad.
Exactly. I don't care if Egypt do good or bad. On a real, the only time I care about other nations is if one of my favorite players at Man United's there. Like, I like seeing Portugal do well because of Ronaldo, because of Bruno. But by and large, I ain't reading articles about what's going on. I'll finish my point. And this is the one thing I would say is that bias is there because there are millions of people in England who watch Match of the Day, who watch Sky Sports, who watch TNT Sports. And a big vested interest they have is the English players doing well. We want to hear more about them. Are they going to be in the national team? How they're doing and playing? And the fans that don't care about the English national team, it's like they forget where they're watching the sport. I just know for a fact that if I was to watch a TV show that's based in Spain, that's focused on Premier League football, I just know they're going to focus a lot on the Spanish talent that's here and how that impacts their national team. Or, you got young Howson. I wonder how much the Spanish shows that focus on the Premier League have been speaking about Howson in the last 6 months to a year. I bet he's been one of their main talking points. And rightfully so, he's one of their own. That's the bit that always makes me laugh. It's like, yes, there's a lot of talk about English players in England. Deal with it. It's such a weird thing to get angry about. Sorry, Egal, back to you.
I was going to say, talking about the game, I don't know how much you guys already spoke about it, but The main things that come out of this game for me is one.
We finished. You're finished. Your season is a failure. You're finished. Your team is not ready for Madrid. You're gonna get slammed against Real Madrid. You know your coach is shit. Your team is shit. Everyone is shit. You're gonna get slammed. You're gonna have a failure of a season. Real Madrid are gonna win 4-0 against you. You know the drill, Egal. You know the drill. It's just that's how it goes.
See, this is Mo looking at Twitter posts now. Let's get back to reality.
That's sarcasm. That's sarcasm.
No, yeah. I get it. Those are all Twitter takes right there. But and TikTok. But one thing I will say is, getting back to reality, the game in itself doesn't really have any major implications to the rest of our season. We already know Liverpool won the league. I think we can all acknowledge, going back to February 20th when we lost to West Ham, that was pretty much like one of the last nails in the coffin where I lost hope. And that's where February 20th was the day that I basically said, you know what, Liverpool, you're probably going to go win the league. And I apologize for some of my ridiculous takes I said throughout the season. But as for Real Madrid, going into that game, we didn't need any injuries. I'm happy with the fact that we didn't get any injuries. It's nice to see some of the players get some game time. But these guys, from now to the end of the season, as long as we're in the Champions League, they're going to get rotated in the Premier League. They need to step up. We need to see the likes of Ethan doing his job. We need to see the likes of Trossard doing his thing. We need to see some of these guys, Kivior and Saliba, partnership needs to continue to grow. I didn't know they're undefeated in the league together as a starting duo also. That's kind of interesting. But hey, and then what else is there? Also, the final thing I'm going to say is...
Can I ask you a question about that? I don't lose faith for it. Are you worried? A lot of people are saying that Arsenal showed like a loser mentality today because it was like a giving up. What's your response to people, Egal, saying that it's a loser's mentality and the fact that you weren't running through a brick wall today means you won't win major trophies?
I think they're ridiculous. They need to realize that the main job today was to manage the tie and manage the game and go into the next leg, securing a spot in the semi-final. Let's be honest, the Premier League is over. It's not a loser mentality because what the team that's supposed to catch us in second just dropped points also in Nottingham Forest. There's really nobody on our necks to say they're going to take us out of the top 4, top 5 positions. So what loser mentality are they talking about? It would actually be a bigger waste of time if we brought out our starting 11 in this game, somebody got injured, and then Mikel Arteta would get absolutely slammed. So I think you're literally just talking shit. To say loser mentality, we just beat Real Madrid 3-0. We're trying to go to a semi-final. Liverpool already won the league. What loser mentality? We're 11 points behind. It's almost mathematically impossible for Arsenal to catch Liverpool.
But I have a very interesting take about this, and I wanted to ask Egal about this.
Go ahead. Do you guys think Arsenal changed their stance on Thomas Partey? Because they've not yet offered him a new contract.
No.
He's been begging for a contract. And at this point, it's like, if he takes a deal that is favorable to the club and it's like short, would that benefit? That would benefit Arsenal, but would he do that? Would the player be willing to take a pay cut in like a 2-year deal?
Yeah, look, I would say this. Saad, I'd love to get your opinion. I keep forgetting Saad's here because he ain't got his camera on today. I'd love to get your view on this. Look, he stayed fit the majority of this season, Thomas Partey. But do you think it would be a risk to give him another year, another 2-year deal? Do you think it's a better move to let him go and bring Zubimendi in instead?
Well, obviously, listen, what we've been told by every like ITK, every journalist, is that this was a mutual decision. Do you know what I mean? It's not like it's only Arsenal that don't want to go ahead with it. I think Thomas Partey is also looking at other options, and I think Barcelona's in for him and stuff like that. So, do you know what I mean? Like,
his team said they're open to a deal with Arsenal. It's Arsenal that's not willing to speak to him about a new deal.
But regardless, let's say for instance Barcelona are involved, he's obviously going to be looking at that as another option to possibly go out to Spain. Like for me, I look at Thomas Partey and I'm like, to have him in the club, of course, yeah, he'd offer something to us. Of course, he's a very good midfielder. He's a very good DM, so he'd offer us a lot going forward into the next 2 years. But I can also see the reasoning why we might not want to sign him, because maybe we'll want to go a different way. We want to get other midfielders in. We kind of want to refresh that midfield, add a bit of youth into it. When I say youth, I'm not talking about like a 19-year-old or a 20-year-old. We're trying to add like a 23, 24-year-old. We're trying to add a bit of youth into that midfield so we have a midfielder for the next 5 to 6 years. Same thing with the striker position. I think there's a lot that's going to change. So For me, I don't think they're going to do a U-turn on this thing. I think they've already made their mind up on Thomas Partey. It is unfortunate to a certain degree, but
I know
you know
he's
what I
been
mean?
playing well.
Oh,
I know he's been playing well. Do you know what I would say, Egal, though? I know he's a much better player, and I know he's had a better career. But do you remember when Eddie Nketiah had that little period where it was like, actually, maybe he's the guy and he got the 100K deal? That 100K a week was probably better off going into another player. And I would say with Thomas Partey, give him another 2-year deal, and then he has another 2 seasons like the previous few where he's been injured a lot. I think it will really get under people's skin. I think your club's made a decision to move on from him and to bring in younger players with, you know, their main career ahead of them. I think you should stick to your guns on that. As great as he's doing, I still think you're seeing a little bit of a, what is it, like a little bit of a renaissance, but it is still the twilight of his career, and I think that you need to move on from him personally.
I think it's an odd if we look at Thomas Partey, this season is an odd season because he's not been injured. I just don't want the club to get like, you know, tricked into signing him on a new deal, making the same mistake that they made with Nketiah. I think that's a perfect example. Do you know what I mean? You don't want to get tricked into signing him on a new deal, and the next thing you know, he misses all of next season.
You sometimes need to look at a larger sample size of, you know, look at the last 2 or 3 years in totality and how fit has he been, the performances, and then think, well, what's the next 2 or 3 years going to like? Is it going to be the same as this season? Or, you know, if, for instance, you know why he was injured and he's addressed that. You know, Ryan Giggs is always the example I use because it's very famous because he spoke about it. His hamstrings went, but then he stopped driving sports cars because they found out the way that he was sitting had a strain on them, started doing yoga, fixed his hamstring issues. Man United kept him. Had he not addressed those problems, we probably would have sold him in his early 30s or his late 20s, early 30s, because Ryan Giggs with no hamstrings would be a useless player, right? So, yeah, I think there may be things that you guys know that they don't, but the fact you guys are not turning around and trying to keep him, I'd probably trust the club on that.
I actually think, I completely disagree with all of you, actually. I actually think you guys are only looking at last season. Arsenal challenged 2 years ago because Thomas Partey was arguably the best DM in the league along with Rodri in that year before he got injured in the last 8 games. And then last season he was injured. This season he's fit. And the problem with Arsenal fans is that you guys are judging him based on the times he played right back when you lost games. Every time Partey played as a DM, he actually played well. And Mikel Arteta has put him in that place. So over the last 3 years, Thomas Partey has been more good than bad. And if you're going to bring in Zubamendi and you're going to get rid of Jorginho, I think you should keep Thomas Partey because he's another good DM that should be playing. Football-wise, I actually think he's very good. And I think he's not slowing down. And it's back to the medical team. If they think the guy will stay fit and the injuries past him, I think they should sign him because I don't think he has played a game as a DM bad for Arsenal. You can count the games that he played as a DM bad for Arsenal on your one hand over the last 3 years.
Most of his bad games have been at right back, to be fair.
Exactly. See, it's masked by it.
I understand. I understand that. I mean, and I understand your point. I'm just talking about it from the perspective of, because I haven't put any real thought into it. I'm not an Arsenal fan, but if the fact the club are like, no, we're going to move on from him, I think there's something in that. Speaking of that, I don't know how true this is.
One more thing quickly. Thomas Partey is the most polarizing player at the club right now, I would say.
Yeah, and look, there are other reasons why certain people want him out of your club as well, which we're not going to go into today. I don't know how true this is. Someone's saying that Arteta has said that Thomas Partey had an issue and had to come off. There might be an injury to him. That would be ironic after us just talking about his injury problems if he's got injured today. That would be a madness. I
think that's mind games.
There we go. I've got a few super chats I want to do here. First one says, what was at stake today? Was Saka, Timber, Rice supposed to play 95 minutes today? Shouldn't Arteta approach today's game with Madrid in mind? I don't understand using today's game. I mean, look, Real Madrid are behind, so I get it. Real Madrid have been the club that are begging. They beg La Liga to move their game to give them more rest time, as an example, right? So let's not pretend like the most successful team in the world, the God, the Mecca, you know, the holy grail for Standard FC are not also looking at how do we rest players and keep them ready for this really, really important game at the weekend. You know, as an example, the idea that Arsenal taking out some intensity and rotating for the Premier League game, which, by the way, where they can't win the league, right? Real Madrid can. The irony in it is absolutely staggering to me.
Now, but Terry, Standards FC would have rested Bukayo Saka for the rest of the season, and we would have lost to Real Madrid at home.
Well, but that's the thing in it as well. They're like, don't rush players back, keep them fresh. And then today, the same dickheads will go, you got to play with intensity in every tackle and every moment with all our best players on the pitch. They're the same people, by the way, that 2 months ago said the league title race is over, and today will moan that you didn't win a game in a competition they said it's over. They are sometimes. They're absolute rage baiters. They're rage baiters.
Also, Kivior is useless. He wins a couple games. It's like, you know what? We got to keep Kivior. We can't sell him.
Yeah, it's crazy. 240k a week, 105 transfer equals 0 trophies. Well, so far, Declan Rice hasn't won trophies. And if by the end of his Arsenal career, there's no trophies, and he hasn't won any trophies, and these performances fall off, and he hasn't been a very good player for them, then yes, at the end of his time there, you can say that was a waste.
Hater.
That's a waste of money. But he's not at the end of his.
Say something on this. He's a hater. Declan Rice has been one of the most successful £100 million signings so far. Let's be honest. There's not been too many successful £100 million signings. Jack Grealish flopped. There's not been too many like £100 million signings that actually come into the team and raise their levels as an individual.
Jack Grealish won trophies.
Yeah, he won trophies, but how much impact did he actually have?
I think successful is not a word to use. I think you should more use a word like, I don't know,
impact.
Important. Yeah, impactful or something like that.
Yeah, let's think about it. Everyone's talking about Caicedo in the chat. Caicedo's a great player. Don't get me wrong, but he hasn't overall raised the levels of the entire Chelsea team.
Well, if you
he's going to win the Conference League, and it's a trophy that you don't have.
Yeah, that's not guaranteed.
Declan Rice has won that trophy in his career.
I'm joking. Why do people don't understand sarcasm?
I do. I was about to add. I was about to add to it, Mo. I was about to add to it. I think for me, with the Caicedo conversation is interesting. Aesthetically on the eyes, I get people say Caicedo is better, but again, and Chelsea fans should get this more than anybody, because they prop up Lampard, who's great. They talk about Drogba, that was, again, a good technical footballer. They speak about clutch moments with him. And it's like what Declan Rice has done in an Arsenal kit so far this season in terms of the goals he scored, what he did in that quarterfinal. That's a moment that Caicedo's not had yet. So if you're just going to take those two in isolation, forget all other £100 million signings and midfielders, and look at those two, we can all sit there and talk about which person's ability, which person aesthetically we prefer. That's a great conversation to have. When you look at milestone moments, Declan Rice is ahead of Caicedo. He just is. He just is right now in terms of what he has delivered so far. Neither of them, by the way, have delivered anywhere near enough to justify the price tag as of yet. But it's a really interesting one. I basically see a lot of people also shit on Rice to prop up Caicedo, and I do sort of laugh a little bit when I just sort of think, I feel like they're starting that debate too early. Like when it was Lampard and Gerrard as an example, it started like in the mid to end of their careers when they achieved lows. I think we're starting it a little bit too early, people, so slow down. This was to me a little bit earlier that said, what makes Arsenal challengers next season, but yet everyone expects Liverpool to drop off, make it make sense. I respect you as a member, but the problem with your comment is that I don't think Liverpool are dropping off. Yeah. So you can't throw a challenge at me based on somebody else's opinion. You're on mute, Egal.
The reason why people say this is because they look at Liverpool and the work they're going to have to do to rebuild the way that they create with Trent leaving. And they're also going to have a whole offensive rebuild with a bunch of their attacking players leaving. Where you look at Arsenal with Mikel Moreno up top and Kivior in defense, they're going and beating Real Madrid. You could definitely see us getting Kivior the levels we could reach. I don't think Liverpool make one signing that raises their levels that high.
Egal, can I ask you a question? You a question quick?
Yeah.
With Mohamed Salah and Virgil van Dijk signing contracts now, does that still make? Do you still think they're going to fall off?
No. At this point, let's be honest. There's not going to be a fall off to like top 4 team. What it's going to be is Liverpool are going to be there and thereabouts. It's just they're going to have to reinvent themselves. They're not going to be able to create the same way. They're not going to be able to do the same things they've done this season because Trent has been a massive part of their build-up play. they're going to have to find a new way to build up play. And you're going to see in the next couple games, while Trent is injured or he's not playing, that they're going to have to find solutions. And currently, their current iteration of this team does not have many other offensive solutions on how to create from deep.
Don't they have Conor Bradley?
Yeah, he ain't going to create like Trent. We can have that debate on another day, gents. That's another day's conversation. Just I've got to get through these super chats. I'm sorry, boys. Says that Gallagher is a bad example. He was hyped up by the British media as a world-class player that Chelsea couldn't survive without him, and now he's benched. Look, I would say this though, C. You don't need to attack Conor Gallagher based on his passport. Say he's a trash player. You don't need to mention his nationality. I think that's the whole point here. It's all about. I'm all about Norwegians. Man United and Barca must. Just saying. Thank you, my friend. Truth is said in jest. Look, the actual saying is many a truthful word is spoken in jest. I think is the saying, and sometimes they are. However, there are lots of times that people make a joke and they are just joking. Like you think I think people have been taken aback. Like most comedians tell jokes, they don't mean what they say. Why do I know? My dad was a stand-up comedian my whole life. The amount of things he said about my mum and me and my brothers, the stories weren't even fucking true. They were jokes. He made them up. Like it's just. And I know just the way me and my friends are, the way we joke and rip into each other. I just know we don't mean it. We wouldn't have been friends for 30 odd years if some of the things we say to each other are nasty. If we actually meant them underneath, there's no way our friendship and bond would have gone from children in nursery and reception together right through to men going into their 40s. Impossible. So let's be really honest about that. Aesthetics are part of football. Yes, they are. And I'm not saying people shouldn't like players because of their aesthetics. However, you have to look at objective truth in football. So, Declan Rice's a bad passer. He's got 90% pass accuracy in the Premier League. I think it's like an 88% pass accuracy in forward passes. Objectively speaking, he's not a bad passer. You don't have to like it, but he's not bad. If a music artist has 5 albums, they all go number 1, sells 50 million records, you might not like the music, but say they're bad at music, I just think it's an objectively wrong statement to make. It may not be the music you like, but yeah, objective truths matter. Most complaints come from fans who basically have gone so far towards Arteta out, almost need him to fail for their own sanity. Just a thought from an outsider looking in. They're right to focus on Real Madrid.
Can I just go in on this because I think all of this stuff.
I need to head out, guys.
All right, bro. Cheers, mate.
Big up, Mo. Big up. I think all of this, these people that are coming out and saying, "Oh, it's a disgrace that we drew today. It's a disgrace that they weren't performing to a level. This and this and that." It's just laughable to me. If you see my content leading up to this game, I was thinking of doing unthinkable things. If I was allowed to, I'd play under 10s, and I'd just forfeit the game. I mean, I don't really understand what these people want. Like, I've got people telling me, "Oh, we got to keep top 2 though. We got to keep second place." And I'm like, right, okay, let's just. I think we're gonna get second place anyway because I think the teams below us are just way too inconsistent for to even catch us, and we consistently keep on even getting like a point and still adding it.
But that's the irony as well. So sorry, Side, you've called out another irony with Standard FC. Because they all say that whether you finish second or whether you finish 20th, forget third or fourth. They say if you come second or last, it's the same position. You didn't win. So therefore, why is this sudden obsession of coming second matter to this very people that state that second place and last place in the league are the same position? It doesn't. This is the point that this super chat makes. They just have to shit on Arteta. They just have to make another negative twank. You can't make the claim that second place and last place in the league are the same position and then be angry that you might drop to third from second. It doesn't make sense. One of your statements is a lie. Then which one is it?
Yeah, and I just saw a comment. in the chat saying, "Oh, but that's loser mentality. You should want to win every game." When I make the joke and say I'd play the under 10s and all of that stuff and say I would forfeit the game, whatever, that's obviously a joke. That's said to make people laugh. But in regards to the actual game, of course I want us to win. But my saying of I'll play the under 10s and I'll forfeit the game means that if we draw or lose, yes, I wanted to win that game, but I'm not gonna be screaming down the computer screen just at the camera, just going crazy.
Yeah,
So
no,
yeah,
but you get comments like this, right? Absolute horseshit comment. Obviously, 2nd and 20th isn't the same. One's getting relegated and one puts you in the Champions League. I agree with you, Artful Dodger. You have not understood what I'm stating. I'm literally calling out the insanity of Standards FC that will tell you. So let's even make it less extreme than they say. They say that coming 17th and 2nd are the same because you're a loser. If you don't win the league, it's all losing. That is their stance. So, Artful Dodger, you calling me out for criticizing? You're criticizing me for criticizing a comment that you think stupid. That's mad, bruv. Because these same people are now saying you better not lose 2nd. Why does it matter? If 2nd and 17th are the same, why does 2nd or 3rd matter? And I think it's like the super chat said, Artful Dodger, is that some people just want to be angry. You know, what is the saying that Alfred said in Batman? Some people just want to watch the world burn. And I think that's so true. It's just strange. I enjoy it, by the way. I find it strange, but I enjoy watching the hypocrisy in it. The same fan said 2 months ago, the league's over, it's done now, might as well go on the beach. A fuming that in that competition, you're not giving your all. I don't get it. I don't get it.
The thing is, every fan base has got these kind of people who the negativity just, I don't know whether it gives them a dopamine effect. I don't know what it does, but it just, the negativity just makes them feel alive because they're like, oh my God, I can complain, I can just shout, I can just scream, I can get all. Maybe they're stressed in real life, but they can't like project it, so they just project it through football. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, but there's obviously trolls in the comments going, now Terry, 2nd and 17th are definitely not the same thing. You earn more money. So yeah, I know you guys are trolling me and they're trying to trigger me. And Artful Dodger's trying to do it now as well, saying I'm exaggerating their points. No, Standard FC exaggerate all their points. They exaggerate all their points on purpose. And I don't think Arsenal fans should get drawn into it. And it's like, I know it's another draw this season, but I think you always have to look at the game state as well and everything else. But Terry, Chandler or Paddy? If it's going to go, listen, I'm going to go with. I don't know. I'm going with Paddy by submission, late 4th round submission. However, I'm not certain on that prediction because Paddy fights with his chin quite high and out. And if Chandler lands on his chin, he could spark him out cold. And I like Paddy Pimblett as a fighter. But I do kind of want to see him get knocked out just because the memes about Scousers don't get knocked out would just be epic, wouldn't they? So, but I've just got a gut feeling. I'm siding more towards Paddy by submission in the 4th is what I'm going with.
I really hope it doesn't. I hope it doesn't go the distance, because if it goes the distance, I think Chandler's experience will help him through that fight. Just my input. But obviously what you're saying about his chin, yeah, he does. But apparently they've said they've been working on that. They've been working on him, trying to make sure that his chin's not just in the air, especially against Chandler.
And he's been better in his last couple of fights, to be fair. But the guys that he's fought, I didn't necessarily, especially like when he fought Tony Ferguson. Ferguson, I love, but he's so far past his best. It's such a hard one to judge. This is the biggest test of Pimblett's UFC career. But if he wins this, Paddy, then he does put himself. It depends how he wins as well. If he wins comfortably, like I've seen Chandler give all the best fighters in this division like a really good run for their money. So if he's able to like beat him comfortably, I think Paddy announces himself into that elite category after that point. So we could get some big fights. This here says Thomas Partey played 14 games in 2023-24. Arsenal missed the league by 2 points. Imagine if we didn't have Rice that season. And it's just so true. I mean, Arsenal didn't. Declan Rice was a linchpin in that title charge last season. They didn't get over the line as a club, but I don't think Arsenal failed to get over the line because of Declan Rice. I don't think Declan Rice was an issue that stopped Arsenal from winning the league last year, as an example. And yeah, I mean, and so he individually delivered very, very well in the title race and in the title push. If he can do that 3, 4, 5 times in his Arsenal career, and on 2 or 3 of those occasions they get over the line and win, again, it'll be well worth the 100 million. But again, we can't judge that until his career's over because it's still at the fairly early stages, in my personal opinion. The goal he scored, he kept pace with Rice. He did very, very well today, Thomas Partey. He did very, very well indeed. Look, I want to thank every single person who tuned in. I really do appreciate it. Please do me a big, big favor and hit the like button. Please make sure you are subscribing to the Football Terrace. We're back tomorrow with more content for you. Big fan chat. We're going to have a fan channel review show in the morning, and then big, big match reactions for you tomorrow. With the big focus will be on the Chelsea game, if I'm being honest, for the 1 p.m. games, because 2 p.m. games, because the other ones are essentially dead rubbers. And then Newcastle, Man United will be a big focus because Newcastle in that top 4 race indeed. It wasn't a great day for Chelsea today. Chelsea must win tomorrow because Newcastle are likely to. And of course, with City winning today and Villa winning today, massive game for Chelsea tomorrow. So make sure you're all back here for the content tomorrow. Saad, always a pleasure. To all of my super chatters, I love you dearly. Until next time, take care. Goodbye. God bless. And I'll see you all again soon. Peace.